Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our webinar today on mindfulness of mind states, using mindfulness to navigate turbulent times. My name is Summer Meyer, and I'll be your moderator today. Just a reminder, please ask questions in the questions window of the GoToWebinar, and that's how you'll engage with us. We'll have a little bit of a Q&A dialogue towards the end of our session today. And we do have a disclaimer I would like to state that the views and thoughts and opinions expressed here in the webinar today belong solely to the presenter and not necessarily to PeaceHealth. Our presenter today is not a medical professional. However, he does have extensive experience in utilizing these mindfulness practices to recover from multiple and severe traumatic experiences that he suffered as a child. So with that, I would like to introduce to you our speaker today. His name is Parikh. He's been leading our mindfulness sessions here. We're in the series of 5 of 8 sessions that we'll be offering. And Al has been a project manager for us and a mindfulness coach. He's been practicing mindfulness for 29 years, and he's been coaching mindfulness for 7 years. Al offers a weekly lunchtime mindfulness session for our caregivers here at PeaceHealth, and we're so honored that he has graciously and humbly offered to share his breadth of knowledge with us in this mindfulness webinar series. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Al to get us started today. Thank you and welcome, Al.
Yes. Well, thank you for that introduction, Summer. I would like to welcome all the participants to this webinar. We are going through some very tough and trying times. I think that our overall situation has gone from bad to worse in the last few weeks. I think that we all need as much help as we can get to navigate through this difficult situation. So there is a small team here at PeaceHealth, myself and Summer Meyer and Lisa Tangen. We have collaborated together to put out this series of mindfulness webinars. And our sincere hope is that you will gain some knowledge and you will get access to some tools that will help you manage your situation a little better. So mindfulness is a very broad and deep practice. And the advantage is that you can tailor it in your own unique ways to meet your needs. So as part of this webinar, I'm going to talk about the basic concept of mindfulness. And then I will talk about the mindfulness practice that is specific to mind states. I will talk about the categories of mind states that we can utilize in this practice. I will talk about the dynamics of this practice, and then we will have a 15-minute guided practice. All right. Finally, I'll talk about the benefits, and then Summer will open up the virtual floor for some Q&A. So let's get started. What is mindfulness? So there are a number of definitions that are available in the popular literature. One of the definitions that I find very relevant is a simple one, and it's this. Mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we are doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us or inside us. So there are some important components in this definition. The first component is one of basic human ability. So, mindfulness is essentially a basic ability. It's not something complicated to develop. It is not rocket science. It's a very simple practice. But you need you need to develop some skill set, and for that you need to do this practice again and again and again. But the point is that this is something very basic to our human nature. The second component is being aware of where we are and what we are doing. So this is the part where we talk about being in the present moment, where we are in touch, where we are wide awake to what we are doing and how it is affecting us. The third component is one of non reaction, uh, where we don't get reactive. We don't react to something blindly. We don't react to something out of sheer force of habit, nor do we get overwhelmed by whatever it is that's happening. We try to stay mindful, quote unquote, and we observe whatever is happening within us. And that brings me to the final component, what's going on around us or inside of us. So when we are engaged in the world outside, as we experience the world outside in real time, it affects us from the inside. And so at some point in time, the stuff that's happening inside of us start to dictate how we perceive what we are experiencing outside. All right. um, but by being aware of what's going on within us and around us, we break the habitual pattern of proliferation of our mind states. All right, and I'll speak about that in more detail in this webinar. So there are many types of mindfulness practices. Okay, so we can use our breath, we can use our body, we can use our thoughts and emotions, right? And mind states. So if you have attended my previous webinars, uh, this is the fifth webinar in the series. So the first one focused on the breath, the second on the body, the third on the thoughts, and fourth on the emotions. And today we are going to talk about mind states. And then there are a couple of other practices that actually complement and extend the practice of mindfulness. And those are the practices of loving kindness and the practice of Tonglen. So I won't talk much about these two specific practices today. Our next webinar in 2 weeks from now is going to be on loving kindness. So it's going to be loving kindness part one and then loving kindness part two. So let's get to the principles behind mindfulness of mind states practice. So, mind states, sometimes referred to as mental states, they are essentially a series of moments of awareness of objects that come in contact with our five senses and our mind. So if we see an object, let's say um, you walk into a Starbucks store, right? And you happen to see a croissant, okay, a butter croissant. Um, Immediately your mind state will change. The moment there is an awareness, the moment there is a contact with an object outside, it creates a mind state inside of us. So our mind state would become one of wanting to consume that that particular object, you see. And this happens with all our senses. If we listen to a beautiful piece of music, for example, right, it creates a different mind state, um, and so on. So that is the basic kind of definition of what mind state or mental state is all about. So it is a series of moments of awareness that changes, right, depending on how we are engaging with the world outside. So mind states, they are a conglomeration of mental representations. Now, uh, coming back to my earlier example, right, of you walking into a Starbucks store and looking at that piece of croissant, right? A number of things might happen inside of you. You might develop an emotional response. So let's say you're having a bad day or you're anticipating a bad day. Just by looking at that croissant would want you to crave for it. You'll feel some kind of a sensual craving to consume it. You will feel that, oh, if you have that croissant, it'll make you feel good. Yes, it'll make you feel good for sure, right? But now, because you are taking in all the other factors that are going on around you, that will create an aggregate state, an aggregate mind state or mental state, if that makes any sense. So basically, you can look at this example and you can see that there would be a jumble of thoughts and emotions and judgments, and then they'll be kind of layered with this mind state. Okay. So the mind itself can be known through the mental states that arise with it and that color it. So again, in this particular example, right, depending on your situation, if you are looking at a butter croissant, for example, depending on your situation, you might have, you might experience this emotion of greediness, or you might be filled with love and compassion, or you might be filled with hatred or aversion, especially if you are looking at the calorie content or the fat content of that croissant, right? So the mind state or the mental state gets tainted or colored with the way we come in contact with the objects, or the way we engage with the world outside. So we can get to know our mind through this series of mind states. Now, in practicing of this, in practicing mindfulness of the mind, we need to see for ourselves how we experience each of these states, right? So, for example, when we want something, right, we get into this state of like fever. It's a feverish kind of an excitement to need something or to want something, right? There might be a tightness and contraction if there is a feeling of anger, and again, in this example, right, you might get angry at yourself for not having sufficient willpower to not consume it or to avoid it, um, so there can be a number of states that can arise out of this simple experience of you walking into a Starbucks store. Now, the problem is that our mind state changes from moment to moment, right? We go through innumerable states throughout the day or throughout the hour, for example, and it's really difficult to categorize them. So in one of my previous webinars where I talked about mindfulness of thinking process, right? We did this mental noting exercise where we observed the thoughts that were coming into our mind and we gave them a high level label, okay, like planning or judging or uh, you know, or memory, remembering, etc. That is a little difficult to apply here in mind states because there are numerous categories. I mean, there are numerous kind of mind states that arise within us. All right. So, so many different schools of thought and different healing modalities have come up with different categories. So instead of trying to pinpoint an exact mind state that you are experiencing, it's helpful to have an overarching category. All right. So dialectical behavior therapy, it's a specific type of cognitive behavioral psychotherapy that was developed in late 1980s by the psychologist Marsha Linehan. It's very, very powerful, and it was actually originally created to help people treat borderline personality disorders. All right, and since its development, it has been enhanced. So now it's being used for treatment of other mental health disorders as well. So within dialectical behavior therapy, they have defined three categories of mind states. So the first category is emotional mind. Emotional mind is where we experience an emotion and feel like we are in the emotion itself. This is the mind that gets carried away by emotions, and this is the mind that actually reasons with emotions. The second category is reasonable mind. Reasonable mind is when we look at the facts of a situation and we reason very logically. So there are no emotions involved. It's just facts and it's just logical thinking. And the third category is the so-called wise mind. Wise mind is when we want to maintain a balance between the emotional mind and the reasonable mind. And so wise mind is a combination of both the reasonable mind and emotional mind. It has a components of both. Now, it's very important to state that we do not judge between these mind states. It's not helpful for us to say that, oh, if I have an emotional mind, that means it's bad, or if I have a reasonable mind, it's bad. No, that's not what we are talking about. We are trying to observe the mind state at this particular point in time. We are taking a snapshot, so to speak, of what our mind state is at this point in time. And having these three broad categories helps because we can quickly discern, okay, am I being very reasonable, am I being emotional, or am I being wise? So even though the third category is wise mind, uh, it's helpful to not judge yourself. So if you think that you are getting very emotional, you shouldn't feel that you are not wise. Okay, because that mental state will change. It can change in an instant. So these are the three categories in dialectical behavior therapy that uh, that is used for for people. And then in the old tradition, where this whole practice of mindfulness grew, there are two categories of mind states. One category is that of an unskillful mind. So, unskillful mind is when we are filled with greed, hate, and delusion. So, this is the category of mind that results in stress. We feel stressed inside and we end up taking action. In that state of mind, if we take any action, it ends up leading to somebody else's stress. Okay, so that is an unskillful mind. Um, and the second category is skillful mind. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. So when we have this unskillful mind state, it almost always results in one's isolation from others. So for example, when you feel anger, right? When you're filled with the emotion of anger, your mind state isolates you from others. So you are not able to think of other people. All right. So also with greed and delusion. Delusion is another word for confusion. So when you are in a confused state of mind, you are essentially isolating yourself from others. The second category of the mind state in the old tradition is that of a skillful mind. So skillful mind is when we are free of greed, aversion, and delusion. This is a category of mind that results in inner peace, happiness, and joy. All right. And skillful mind results in the qualities of mind like caring and empathy for others. So um, we will use this specific category, skillful mind, unskillful mind, in our guided practice that will start soon. It is important to note that even though we use the term skillful and unskillful, it is best not to judge yourself. So if you are doing this practice, right, and if you get filled with with an emotion of anger, for example, right, and you note that your mental state is one of unskillful mind, it helps not to judge yourself, because when you judge yourself, you are you are adding to the level of unskillfulness, if that makes any sense. So the idea is to just observe, and see it change. Because, like I said, mind states change all the time, right? By observing and not reacting to it, right, you are able to contain it. You are able to skillfully deal with it. All right. So it's very important that when you note this category, skillful mind or unskillful mind, it's good not to judge, but just observe, and let it pass away. So, like I said, we will use this category of mind states in our guided practice later in this session. I just want to take a brief pause. Um, so, this topic, mindfulness of mind states, is somewhat deep, uh, and it's very likely that you might have a ton of questions, right? If I am not able to get to your questions in the Q&A session, please feel free to email your questions to the Healthy You email address that Summer uh, will outline, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So I'm trying to squeeze a lot of content within a period of 1 hour. Okay, so please bear with me. So what is the dynamic of this practice? So the way you practice is you first focus your attention on the sensation of the breath moving in and out of the body. So we use the breath as the primary object to get started. And then if a mind state arises that is strong enough to disrupt your mindfulness of breath practice, then you rest your awareness on that mind state. Okay, so for example, let's say you are focusing on the breath, right, moving in and out of the body. You're breathing in, breathing out, and then immediately you have a thought of some task that you need to do that you are dreading. Okay, immediately your mind state will become that of an unskillful mind, in the sense that it will lead to your stress, it will add to your stress. Okay, so at that time, just note that an unskillful mind state has a reason. Okay, that's when you make a note. And then quickly see how that mind state manifests in the body. Every time we have, or rather, sensations in the body, the the breath in the body, the emotions, and the mind state, they are all interrelated. All right. If you have a thought um, of something bad that happened to you, let's say, a week ago, right? And if that thought generates an emotion of anger, right, you will develop that specific mind state, right? It will also manifest itself in your body. So your heart rate might go up. You might end up clenching your fist, all right? You will experience some kind of a contraction or the tightening of your body. So in this practice, right, notice how the mind state manifests in the body. All right, see where in the body you can feel the effect of that state. And then discern whether that mind state will lead to more happiness, peace, and joy in your life, or whether it will lead to more suffering, more stress, and more difficulty. And finally, if you are unable to discern any mind state, then focus your attention back to the breath. Bring your attention back to the breath and just be patient. All right. As long as you are breathing, right, you are bound to experience mind states. You are bound to experience thoughts and emotions, and judgments and beliefs. All those mental objects will rise within you, and you will be able to discern mind states. So, even though this may seem complex, uh, it's it's not. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to quickly practice it even in real time, even when you are engaged in the world outside with your eyes wide open. So, let me go through this dynamics again, okay? Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath. When a mind state arises that is strong enough to disrupt your breath practice, in other words, when you get distracted, right, try to make a note of your mind state, right, and note if that mind state is skillful or unskillful. You don't have to analyze deeply, you just make a quick note, all right, and then note how that mind state manifests in the body, and then quickly discern whether that mind state will lead to more happiness, peace, and joy in your life, or whether it will lead to more suffering and more difficulty. All right, so that's the dynamic, and we will start a guided practice soon, and I will guide you uh, with some instructions, and then you will have some time to practice all by yourself. So there'll be period of silence when you'll be able to practice on your own. Okay, so this practice will last for 15 minutes. And Summer, will you be able to kick us off with a bell chime?
Yes, here we go.
Okay, so let's get started.
Okay.
Welcome to the mindfulness of mind states practice. Take a moment to let the body settle in a comfortable position. Relax the whole body. Keep your head, neck, and back erect but not rigid. Keep the hands comfortably placed on the lap or on the knees if sitting. Keep the hands on the sides if lying down. Intentionally cultivate an attitude of patience, gentleness, and kindness towards yourself. Allow your eyes to gently close and tune in to the feeling of the breath flowing in and out of the body. Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath moving past the nostrils or on the sensation of the breath moving into the belly, lifting it during each in breath and receding gently on each out breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. If a mind state arises that is strong enough to disrupt your mindfulness of the breath, rest your awareness in that new state. Is it skillful or unskillful? Notice what it feels like in the body. Is there some contraction or some tension in the body, or is it relaxed? While holding this mind state with mindfulness, note whether it will lead to more peace, happiness, and joy in your life, or whether it will lead to more suffering and more difficulty. If you are unable to discern any specific mind state, gently bring your attention back to the breath. Do this for the next block of 3 minutes. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. If a mind state arises that is strong enough to disrupt your mindfulness of the breath, rest your awareness in that new state. Is it skillful or unskillful? Notice what it feels like in the body. Is there some contraction or some tension in the body, or is it relaxed? While holding this mind state with mindfulness, note whether it will lead to more peace, happiness, and joy in your life, or whether it will lead to more suffering and more difficulty. If you are unable to discern any specific mind state, gently bring it back to the breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. If a mind state arises that is strong enough to disrupt your mindfulness of the breath, rest your awareness in the new state. Is it skillful or unskillful? Notice what it feels in the body. Is there some contraction or some tension in the body, or is it relaxed? While holding this state with mindfulness, note whether it will lead to more peace, happiness, and joy in your life, or whether it will lead to more suffering and more difficulty. If you are unable to discern any specific mind state, gently bring your attention back to the breath. We now come to an end of this practice. Please stay centered for a few moments to dedicate the merits of this practice. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. Well, thank you for bringing us back, Summer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Al, for guiding us through another mindfulness meditation.
Absolutely, sure. Okay, so I have the last slide before we open up for Q&A. So let's talk about the benefits of this practice. So as we bring mindfulness to these changing moments of mind states, we begin to loosen our identification with them, and we strengthen our ability to carry mindfulness into our lives. So if if we are not mindful of our mind states, what happens is, if we have underlying emotions that are unpleasant, for example anger or sadness or whatever, they will taint our mind state. Our mind state would be unskillful, and because of that mindset we'll end up taking unskillful action. So we tend to proliferate this experience of suffering in our lives. So with mindfulness practice we are able to contain the uh, the experience that might not be pleasant or not skillful. This practice allows us to overcome the turbulence of our mind as it arises, instead of letting it build up and proliferate to such an extent that it results in something something more harmful, or something that results in more suffering. So let me give you an example of an experience I had about 2 weeks ago. So it was a wonderful weekend. It was a bright, sunny afternoon on Saturday, and I had to move my lawn. Okay, I don't like to mow my lawn simply because I can't just take my lawnmower and walk and mow the lawn. Because of the way my lawn is situated, I have to rearrange my lawnmower different ways to get to different areas of the lawn. Because it was such a bright, beautiful day outside, there was a sense of frustration inside me because I wanted to go out and be with friends, and have a good time, but I was stuck in my home because of social distancing, right? Um, so there was this sense of restlessness, there was this sense of frustration and a little bit of anger, right?
Mhm.
And I noticed that my mind state was not skillful, right? It was pretty unskillful. But I had to mow the lawn because it was looking pretty bad. So I noticed my mind state, right? And I continued to mow the lawn. It took me about 20-25 minutes, right? And as I was mowing the lawn, right, my mindset didn't really change very much. It still stayed, unpleasant. It still stayed unskillful. But the moment I finished mowing the lawn and the moment I put the lawn away, immediately my whole mental outlook changed. It changed to something very present, it changed to something more optimistic. So what I realized was that because I was kind of mindful during the time I was mowing the lawn, I was able to contain the effect of this unpleasant situation. You see? And as soon as I put the lawn mower away, my mind, my entire state changed. And there was no carry over from that 20, 30 minutes of mowing the lawn. It just went away. So that is an experience. It's a very trivial experience, but it shows you that when you do this practice, you are able to stay in the moment. And when there are moments, when moments arise that destabilize you pick yourself back up, you shake it off, and then you move on. You see? So you end up making
Mhm.
your life whole lot more easier and whole lot less stressful. Okay, so now let's, Summer, can you see if people have any questions?
Yes, looks like Um, yeah, at this point in time in the webinar, I just want to thank everyone for joining. You should see a questions box where you can post questions, and I will go ahead and read those aloud for Al to answer for the next few minutes. And then we'll do a quick wrap up. We would just love to hear your comments about your experience with the practice today, especially if you have joined us in the past. How has your experience maybe been different or similar? Or if you have any questions about this particular mindfulness practice or mindfulness practice in general. It looks like one question from Courtney in the audience today is, do you recommend that we meditate more often during this time, or just listen to our body and gauge the need for meditation?
Um, okay, I would suggest that we all do this meditation practice as often as we can, because there is a skill set involved in this practice. So the skill set of observing the breath, for example, right? The skill set of having our attention stay on the breath, right? Or the skill set of noting whether a mind state is skillful or unskillful, right? So like I said earlier in the webinar, mindfulness practice is not complicated, it's not rocket science, it's a basic human ability to focus our attention on things. Okay, but you need to practice more and more to get more skilled. And as you do this practice, you will find that these skills will seep into your day to day life when you are not meditating, so to speak, right? This ability to note the quality of your mind will come up when you are engaged with the world outside, when you're interacting with other people. So I would recommend that you do formal practice as often as you can.
Mhm. Thank you, Al. Thank you. Especially, I think this question may be coming just from the state of events and all of the activity on social media, especially this week. We do have a follow-up question from Christina. She is saying she would like to start meditating. So, what tips or references might you have for beginners?
Um, If you go to my website, summitmindfulness.com, if you go to a section called resources, I have placed a number of guided meditations for people to use. They all uh, they all have duration of about 15 minutes or so. So you should start with mindfulness of the breath practice, where you just focus your attention on the breath going in and out of the body, and then you can do other practices like body scan, right? Scan your body to observe what's happening inside the body. You can do mental noting, right, where you are observing the thoughts that come into your mind. So all these are objects of mindfulness practice. Unfortunately, this practice of mindfulness of mind states is not on my website at this point in time. I have the script ready. I'm waiting for a music studio to open where I actually go and record these uh, these practices. So mindfulness of mind states is not on my website, but there are a number of other uh, practices that you can use.
And just to remind all the participants too today, looks like we've got a healthy number of attendees in our webinar. We will have this recording available to you to watch at any time after the session. We usually have it up by the end of today. So if you find that this was helpful, or want to practice it again, or listen to it again, or share it with another person in your life, feel free to do so. All of our previous recordings are of webinars that Al has conducted for us are also on our website. And we will be having a couple of additional mindfulness webinars. The next one is June 19th. It will be our loving kindness webinar, part 1. And then we'll have a few more after that. So I just want to make sure everyone here in the call today knows how to find those resources. And I believe the webinar tool also will send you a follow-up email with the link there that Al is showing on his screen. I would like to highlight a couple of additional comments that attendees have posted for us. Thank you so much for sharing. We do appreciate the engagement here, and it helps us feel more in community with each other as we practice and talk about these experiences. So Jess here is sharing that her experience today was really similar to the one for mindfulness of breath, and really feeling into the breathing and being in her body. And she also felt grounded and relaxed. And this is a great one, Jess. Thanks for making this comment. She said that she thinks she observes animals doing a lot of what, Al, you're describing, is kind of shaking it off physically and moving on.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you.
Any additional comments or feedback? Otherwise, I would just like to encourage you to fill out our survey. We look at every single comment and we try to make improvements for the next time. Just a reminder to visit Al's website, summitmindfulness.com, and listen to these guided meditations. We also have our Healthy You newsletter. If you'd like to subscribe, we send out great articles about how to stay healthy, and that includes the mindfulness practice of really a healthy mind, healthy body. So thanks for joining us at PeaceHealth today. We hope you enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Al.
Yeah, thank you, Summer. Everyone have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Al. Bye-bye.
Bye.